Welcome here to Talk FCB and welcome back to the channel, guys. I don't think any of us had really a very good night's sleep, if anything at all, after the big news that broke on Thursday that Lionel Messi will not be continuing at Barcelona. And luckily this morning, we finally had some clarity on the situation. Joan Laporta speaking there openly in a press conference and taking questions from journalists on A, what went wrong with Messi? How did the renewal break down? Is there any hope at all of reviving those talks? B, what happened there with La Liga? What are the restrictions? Again, is there any way that La Liga's stance could change when it comes to Messi? And I think C here, and this is the big one for me, shedding light on our financial situation with Laporta announcing figures that are even worse than we feared. Let's just do it. Because Laporta began the press conference by saying, "Good morning, everyone. I am here to explain the situation with Lionel Messi. Firstly, I would like to say that what we have inherited is just awful." Speaking there about the previous management and the mismanagement of the former administration in charge of Barcelona, he said the wage bill is 100% of what the club generates. He said, we have no margin. Laporta went on, he said, when we first arrived here, the numbers were a lot worse than we expected. Laporta has said that in the past, that all of his board were very, very shocked upon realising exactly how bad things were once you were inside of the club. He said the audit recently has shown us even worse numbers than we originally feared. He said the losses are bigger, the spending is a lot more, and the contracts that are in place from the previous administration, Laporta was lost for words. We all know about these contracts. We all know about the players and the current wage bill of the club that has been out of control now for quite some time. And all of this now is really coming to a head. Laporta said the only way that La Liga would allow us to register Messi was by signing a deal that would negatively affect the club for the next 50 years in terms of television rights. We discussed this in yesterday's video over on MORETALKFCB about the fact that La Liga almost appeared to be forcing Barça into a corner in order to register Messi. And Laporta said, I have to think about the club. It's above everything, even above the best player in the world, the best player in history. He said, I just cannot put the club at risk. I have to act in the best interests of this club. Laporta did go on to say, we think that La Liga could be more flexible. That's interesting there to say La Liga, maybe their stance could change. He said, but that's not an excuse. He said, we did know about the restrictions. He said, I don't want to play the victim. He said, ultimately though, we just couldn't abide by it because of what we have inherited here. He said, I feel so sad, but I feel like we've acted in the best interests of the club. And of course then, when Laporta was taking questions from journalists, one of the big questions that kept circulating from them was basically, is this situation irreversible? Have we reached a point now of no return when it comes to Messi? Or is there still some glimmer of hope somewhere that Messi could remain at the club? Laporta said, though, I don't want to generate false hope. He said the negotiation has ended because of the salary limit. He said we knew there was a time limit on this. He said, of course, for us, the season starts very soon. We had to get something resolved before then. And he said also for Messi, he needs time now to go and see what he's going to do with his future. He said if the restrictions remain rigid and La Liga aren't flexible. So even there, it is interesting that Laporta says, I don't want to generate false hope. But again, we're still talking not about the will of the player. We're not talking about whether or not Messi wants to stay. We're saying if La Liga remain firm in their stance over wages. Laporta went on to explain the offer that was on the table and that was agreed with Messi. He said the offer that we discussed was 2 years of salary to be paid over 5 years. He said Messi was going to stay with us for 2 more years at Barca, and he was very, very happy to do so. He said he was always present, he was always willing in negotiations. He said, but a deal that would have been allowed, it would have been possible in other leagues, in other countries. He said, sadly, it was not allowed, and it could not be finalised in La Liga. It was interesting then that Joan Laporta was directly asked by a journalist, do you feel responsible here for the loss of Messi? You as the president, do you also feel responsible there for leading fans on with false promises? A very bold question indeed. Laporta though, he said no. He said, I've said several times that we would do everything possible to sign Messi, that we would do everything that we could do within our means. And he did say, we did reach an agreement with Leo. He said, but because of the salary limit, we we could not formalise that agreement, but he said everything was done. He said we even shook hands on that deal. He said I don't want to go on and on about the awful decisions that were made in the past that came before our management. He said, but we haven't had the time. He said only now, only recently, because of the audit, have the real numbers come to fruition. Laporta said, I did say that negotiations were going well with Messi because it did seem like La Liga were going to be more flexible with their restrictions. He said we were talking with them very, very often, and that's interesting there. Did something drastically change with La Liga? Were they going to be more flexible until Barça decided they didn't want to accept this deal with CVC? That is something certainly to bear in mind. Laporta said the negotiations with Messi were always good. They were perfect. He made it easy for us. We had the agreement. But the reality is that we couldn't find any resolution with the salary limit, and because of that, we had to make a decision. Laporta was then asked exactly what has happened over the past 48 hours, because yes, things may have been progressing well, yes, we thought that we were closing in on a renewal for Messi, and suddenly now we find ourselves here. Things have changed so quickly and so dramatically, which has obviously hurt all of us fans. Laporta said 2 days ago, I reached the conclusion that it would not be possible to renew Leo. He said yesterday we spoke with his father for the very final time after negotiating for 2 months. He said Leo and his father, they were aware of the situation. They did everything that they could. He said La Liga asks us that we comply with the rules, but he said La Liga want Leo to continue. He said of course they want Messi to continue in their league, but he said there are other clubs who demand that the rules are followed and that no exceptions will be allowed, even to keep Messi in La Liga. Laporta said Messi wanted to stay. He said that was never ever in doubt. Messi's wish and his ambition was to stay at the club for 2 more years. And he said because of that, of course he's sad. He said I'm sad too. And he said it hurts here that because of COVID, now we cannot pay tribute the way that we would have done in 2 years' time to Messi with a full stadium of fans, with the biggest tribute here for the biggest player. He said that is so sad for me. And of course there have been questions about our other signings. There have been questions here about the 4 players that we have already brought into the club. Can we register them now? There are still concerns over whether or not we can even do that because of our financial situation. Laporta, though, said within our calculations we believe that we can register our 4 new signings. He said inside there of La Liga's salary cap. He said the players have made a very big effort with their salaries coming in, the new signings. He said in the conditions in which they've signed, we have to give real thanks to what they've done. However, I think it all becomes very, very clear, and I think you get a real understanding of the situation that we're in. Because look, we all know that Barca's finances right now, they're in tatters. We've known that for several months. We all knew that renewing Messi, that actually building a competitive team this summer, that reducing that wage bill, it was never going to be easy. But I think the gravity of this situation, still, it was probably understated. Because Laporta went on, he said without Messi, even without him, there's still very little margin to play with our wage mass, with our wage bill. He said because even without Messi, we are over the salary limit in La Liga. He said with Messi, our wage bill would have been 110% of the club's revenue. So we would have actually there been paying out more than we get in revenue, which basically means that the club would have been operating at a loss, which is not sustainable and which would ultimately led in the club's downfall. There's no question about that. But even without Messi, even without Messi's wages, we're still in that mess. Laporta says that without him, we are still occupying there 95% of our entire revenue with our wages. That is an absolute joke. He said in football, it should be there between 65 to 70% in wages. He said you can see there is still so much to do. Even without Messi, the mess is still huge. He said we need to continue to work to reduce the wage bill. He said with some players we have managed to reach an agreement with reductions, but with others we are still working on those deals. He said but these contracts that are in place, again he was talking about the contracts, the lengths, the amounts of money that we're paying out, and the problem is it's all signed. It's all there in official documentation. We can't get around those contracts. He said it's not easy. It requires a lot of time. And he said it's not just about the wages either. He said, for example, for the past season, the season that's just gone, he said we expected their losses to be around 200 million with the COVID pandemic, all of that, of course. We expected clubs to be going through a difficult time. He said, but in fact, the losses for last season, they're going to be 487 million euros. That is staggering. That is double, more than double, what the club were expecting. And this is what Laporta means here when he's talking about these numbers that have recently come to light because the club been conducting an internal audit into all the club's finances. It takes time there to go through everything and actually understand how badly the club was mismanaged over the past few years. He said there are still decisions from the previous management that we find very hard to understand. And he even hinted there, again, towards Bartomeu, at criminal activity. And honestly, guys, it is so difficult to actually summarise, our feelings right now, the way that we're feeling. I think who's to blame? I think we all know who is to blame. Deep down, we all know that very, very clearly. Bartomeu is definitely at the heart of all of this mess. He started it. He may not be here now, and that's the kind of annoying thing for me. The fact that Messi here has not left under him. Because let's not forget, last summer, Messi wanted to go. He wanted to leave the club. He was forced to stay against his will, and now he wants to stay. Bartomeu's mess, Bartomeu's mismanagement has meant that he can't even do that. Messi now wants to be here. We cannot finalise that renewal because of the wages, because of all the financial implications that have been left from the previous management. And I honestly don't think for that reason, guys, that we can wholeheartedly here blame Joan Laporta. He is not to blame for the fact here that Messi cannot be renewed, because you can see there how difficult it is and how disastrous our finances are. You also have to say that even when Laporta was campaigning for Barça presidency, even when he got into power, he did never say it's going to be 100% guaranteed that Messi's going to stay. He always said, look, I'm going to do my best. I feel like I'm in a good position to convince Messi to stay by the project, by all of that kind of stuff, and I will do everything in the club's power. And to be fair, he did kind of do that. Messi was willing to stay. Messi was convinced. Messi had that agreement with the club, but we could not finalise it. I think one criticism that I've got to hold my hands up and be honest here and say, you know what, I don't really like the fact that we appear to have been led on. Maybe it wasn't meant to be that way from Laporta. I don't think he ever meant to hurt us fans or anything like that. He's somebody who cares about the club. But I think obviously we've been going on now several months hearing that everything has been going well, when actually we were never really in that position to renew Messi. Our finances have been disastrous. We knew all about that. And I just think here, by dragging this out, I know the club would have wanted the maximum amount of time possible. They probably would have been working on this until the very final moment. But I think for us fans here, hearing that everything was going well and now it's dead in the water, that hurts. That makes it worse for us now to process that information and actually accept that Messi's going to be leaving. So that's the one thing there that I would say that really did sort of put the dagger in the heart. But I think this mess was done. This mess here that was created by Bartomeu, by his decision-making, that was criminal. And we are still going to be suffering the consequences of that man's actions for years to come, even without Messi. There is so much work to do, and let's see now, in the final weeks of the transfer window, exactly what takes place, and exactly what the future holds for this club. Please do let me know, guys, all of your thoughts in the comments down below. This is not a situation that any of us expected to be in. It's not a situation yet that I still feel that we process. We still haven't really come to terms with the fact that Messi, essentially, he is no longer a Barca player, and he will not be continuing. And how do you accept that? How do you even begin to accept that Messi will not be in a Barcelona shirt? Please let me know all your thoughts there on Laporta's words and exactly what's gone wrong here, and how do you see us getting out of this absolute scandalous financial situation? I'll be seeing you shortly with all the latest news, of course. Thank you still, guys, for joining me, and I will see you very soon indeed. But until next time, as always, Visca El Barça.